Hey, it's Sylvan, and this is the Handpan Podcast. If you already know Steve Shehan, you know you're in for a very special episode. If you don't know Steve, well, lean in, because the next 40 minutes give us a rare insight into the brilliant mind and open heart of one of the world's best percussionists, who was also one of the first musicians to explore the hung. Steve Shehan's life story is extraordinary, no doubt about it. Others have covered it much better than I could. In fact, there are many TV and radio interviews with Steve, including a full-length documentary about his life that I'll link to in the show notes. Steve has had a prolific career as a percussionist and a composer, and he's created a monumental body of work of his own, spanning over 4 decades. But what shines through all this are the adventures and the people along the way. We'll touch on some of these things as we return to Steve's first encounter with the hung, his early involvement with pan art, and his relationship to this instrument over the past 20 years. So here's my conversation with probably my biggest inspiration, Steve Shehan. Well, thank you so much, Steve, for accepting my invitation to be on the Handpan Podcast. You are a guest of honor.
Oh, that's really kind. It's a pleasure here, too.
So let's set the stage first. Bring me back in time. Where were you at? What were you doing? What did your life look like around the year 2000?
2000. Well, I was living in New York City, playing with Paul Simon. I worked with him for about 10 years, so I had a flat in New York. Switching to Paris, but I was based in New York for 5 years. So in 2000, I was in New York City. Yeah.
And around that time, you discovered the hung.
Yeah, actually, 98, Mark Stewart handed me a hang drum. I think it was in San Francisco. It was maybe a prototype, but it was interesting. It was unexpected. 98, that was early. So that was my first introduction to the hang drum. And then going back to France, 2002, 2003, I had a friend called Jimmy Brown. Maybe you've heard about him. He introduced me to Felix and Sabine, to the hang, and to different possibilities that we would find with them. So, talking about different scales, and they did send me a shipment, 6 or 7, 5 or 6 hang drums, first generation.
Whoa.
So that was the moment. I mean, like, it was fascinating. I mean, this instrument was a real revolution. It would change a lot of things, for nomads, and in terms of a musical approach. Right away, I knew it would be a major change, in both in a good way and in a strange way, maybe.
Yeah.
But I was facing an instrument that was absolutely revolutionary. I mean, no electronics, carryable, easy to carry around, light, elegant, nice scales, easy to sort of, cope with or dive in what it made possible. So that was really interesting right away. So, So I was fascinated. I thought it was, something new.
Yeah. And when most people come across the hung and then later handpans, they might think it looks odd, but you're accustomed to eclectic instruments. What inspires you about odd musical instruments?
Well, the thing is, you're right in many ways. I mean, the first thing is, okay, how can I adapt myself to this instrument, and how can this instrument make me say something or create something? How can it cope with other instruments? It's like an instinctive first approach. And quality of the sound, I mean, and then the scales made it obvious, but it was worth trying to make it cope, with different instruments. And it's true that my approach, I always try to integrate like crystal organ or even lithophones, prehistorical lithophones you can find at the Museum of Mankind in Paris. Strange sounds, and naturally I try to think right away, how can I introduce and blend this sound or this way of playing into something else, and in different styles if possible. And the hang is definitely playable in really different ways. As a matter of fact, you can play salsa, you can play jazz, you can play Oriental. Really, it's so generous. It's such an instrument.
Mm-hmm.
So right away I went to this, like, okay, how can I blend this? Is it worth it? Is it an instrument that becomes part of the world instrumentarium? And I thought so. I thought it was definitely something powerful and profound. So that was the base of the discussions we had with Felix. And it was interesting.
Yeah. And I've heard rumors that you worked with them to develop sound models. I know about Purvi. Are there any others that you created specifically for the Hong?
Well, it's discussions, ideas. I wasn't a partner that would work on development, no, but ideas, yes. So Purvi, Hijaz, I was part of this movement that wanted probably different scales. I don't know. So it's a rumor, but it's discussions, and but it was not easy because it's not easy to be free spirit.
Right.
It's an interesting instrument because of what it provoked in terms of visions of what this instrument should be.
Yeah.
But listen, the violin is played. The family of violin is played in so many ways in the history of music. So, different, same with drums or rick or frame drums or anything you take. So why not the hang or pan drums?
Yeah.
It should express as largely as humanity has in music in store, I think.
Mm-hmm. You've definitely taken the Hong into a space that has become the Steve Shehan's sound signature. Because those same kinds of frequencies or sound textures in your albums before the Hong was around, you would fill, and you still do, you would fill them with the gamelan or the kalimba or other similar lyrical instruments.
Yeah. You're right, absolutely right. Suddenly the dynamic was different, the structure, the construction was different, everything was different in the approach of the instrument, the shape and the fact that before they had only 8 notes, but the sound and the family of sound it would approach. You're right, it's close to gamelan if you want, or it's close to other steel drums if you want, or. Yes, indeed. It was kind of close to the family of what I usually use.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
And it seems like you were gravitating towards certain scales or sound models. Can you tell me which Hong scales are your favorite to this day? I think you still have them, some of them.
Oh, yes, I still use them, of course. Well, I know you'll understand. Hijaz has been one of the, because I've used it with Hadouk, Rocha Traoré, John Hassel, Shankar, all the guys and girls. But so as itself, the Hijaz hang. But then the notes on the Hijaz blended with Purvi, for example, brings in something totally different. Suddenly you can write things that includes these 2 scales, which is quite different. So it's true that Purvi, Hijaz, the Hungarian, I love this scale. It's great because it's easy to blend and actually if you start playing salsa with the Hungarian, it works great because of the way it's played. I mean, the notes. So I would say these three pan art hangs. I really use them a lot. Yeah, Purvi, Hijaz, Hungarian. There's another one. I don't remember the name. Kind of a Greek scale.
Is that the one that you use for the Santeria piece?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. The name slips, but I like it very much. It's a bluesy scale. I mean, it blends easily with other. Because what I do too, and maybe you've seen it, there might be some videos of concerts. I mean, sometimes I have like 4 or 5 hands in front of me, and maybe one I'll use 2 notes of it. I mean, suddenly it becomes just an instrument with the sound, but you don't have to play the scale as it is, or as it dictates, I would say. So because, I try to find the notes I need. I mean, this is like 10 years ago.
yeah, and we'll jump around chronologically a bit, but it's important to remember that at that time, and that's around the time that I met you. You were playing a concert with Adouk Trio at the Opera of Lyon, and at the intermission, I remember just coming up to you and saying, "Hi, love your music. I also play this weird thing," and you were incredibly kind to invite me and my friends the next day.
Sweet. But I remember, actually, you were on the left side of the stage, I remember, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and then we met a couple other times because you were doing a concert series at La Fnac, the kind of record store.
Whoa.
And that's a long time ago.
Oh, boy, that's like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Was it with the Tuareg guy, or?
Yep, yeah.
Yeah, with Nabil Othmani.
Yeah, so it's important to remember that at that time, the Hong was not famous yet. And then something happened. And this quote-unquote discreet revolution became no longer discreet. And this thing blew up and it went viral.
Oh, yeah. Especially in places like Spain or, Russia. Whoa, Russia was a big thing.
So what changed for you during those years? Because this instrument became associated with street performers and with a totally different, I guess, context than what it meant for you. What were those years like for you?
Well, for me, it was far away from this context. You're right. I mean, it was not at all my pace. I was really into getting deep into writing, composing. You probably heard "Hang with You."
Of course,
it's a tough work. It took me many years to be able to play it on stage, which we do actually still. To adapt it. So that took me quite a while, parallel to my regular gigs, because these years I was playing with John Hassel, I was playing with, I don't remember what we did, and I was actually writing other music for different stuff, in Iran with Elevation, so I was multi-writing. I was more preoccupied to take it to this position or feeling, and it's slow work, take time. But then, at the same time, I would work my piano, or I would work my crystal organ, or I wasn't limited to the hang or pen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it was definitely interesting because I think if we think about the psychology of viral content, viral videos, it gets so much attention that it comes to define something, whether it's the right definition or not. And I remember those years and how it's paradoxical that the Hong documentary was called A Discreet Revolution, the calm before the storm, and then it blew up. I want to go back for a second because you did play a big role in the Hong documentary, and actually, it didn't take me long to realize that Thibaut Caston, the filmmaker of the Hong documentary, is also the filmmaker of the documentary about your life, From Bali to Bali, and a lot of other projects.
Well, actually, this is how I met him. I met him through the Hang documentary.
Yeah. So what's the story there?
Well, this young guy calls me and tells me that he's interested of, filming or doing something about the documentary about the Hang, which is really unexpected, and no one really knows about this instrument. So it's like, whoa, quite young. He was like 19 or something, I don't know. And so he came to my farm, which I'm actually right now.
Mm-hmm.
It's like 60 miles out of Paris, in the middle of nowhere. And it was interesting because he was serious about it. And he went to, I don't remember the guys in this film, but it's interesting. Each one is dedicated to the work he's doing. I mean, considering the instrument and the fact that it's revolutionary in so many ways. But anyways, your question, yeah, Thibault did a great film, quite visionary. Maybe a little too profound and probably a little too honest. So I don't know if I don't know if Arte took the film or if they broadcast it. I don't know.
I don't know. So my experience with this documentary is I was able to get my Hong in 2007. And then a year later, I went to Panart to get it retuned, and Felix handed me a copy of the documentary. By that time, I had already met you, so it was really funny to like put it in the DVD player and see you in there. But I don't know if it was broadcast, if it was aired.
I don't really know. I don't know. I'll ask him. He bought a farm a few miles away from my place, so after the confirmation, we're very close. The guy is a very spiritual, beautiful person.
I mean, it's a wonderful snapshot in time of what the Hong was like. Also, what obscurity and pre-internet, pre-social media exploration looks like.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I forgot that. You're right. Absolutely. But then Felix already had this, how can you call it, schizophrenic, sorry, but I don't know, maybe the word is a little too hard, but he changes 180 degrees of, every day. I mean, he was really happy that Thibault made this film, and then he wasn't. I mean, it was a complicated relationship. I don't know, maybe it's still a great relationship with him. I have huge respect for this guy, both of them. I mean, they're great. Mm-hmm. But it's complicated. They did write me wonderful letters, and the same week I could receive a really hateful letter. So, I don't know. I don't know where they are. I don't know what they want. I think they got, I don't know, something happened. Maybe they didn't protect themselves enough. I don't know. Something was complicated in their approach because, I don't know. You still work with them?
No, so I've been in touch with them recently, and there's obviously a chasm.
Yeah.
A lot of things have changed, and
yeah, probably. Yeah.
We can understand both sides, right? And,
exactly, but that's it. Both sides are logic. Yeah, I know, and that's a sad thing about it. Actually, it's got to be hard for them, because they were generous. I mean, they were really doing it in a beautiful way, and that was part of the fascination we had for this instrument. Because when I remember, actually, what you're asking, it's interesting because I right away I wrote a leak and we had communication about this. Right away told him this and this is so unique and amazing. Why don't we experiment something different with it, And he said yes, and he sent me a bunch of things, which is wonderful. It was Christmas, imagine. I mean, wow. But at the same time, the same week, sort of, so I didn't. It was strange. That's why I did it by myself. Well, it took many years, but I was ready to do it right away because they amazed me, and it was a beautiful story. It was incredible, at the awakening of this new millennium. We were in front of something unique, a momentum.
Yeah. Having experienced your art for quite a while now. I can see how you connected with their sense of poetry and elegance, and yeah, I mean, the music that you've made on the Hong is my all-time favorite. Just to name a few, I think Santeria is this piece hits me every time.
Oh, you're sweet. That's really touches me a lot. Did you hear the last version on the triple album? Do you have it?
Of course, yeah, I've heard every version.
Oh, wow.
And I love that
Wow.
you revisit those pieces, whether it's high jazz or Santeria,
Yeah,
or even the Kites
I like
Dream
that.
and Kites of
Oh, Kite.
Kabul.
I love it. Kites in Kabul, yeah. Yeah, it's fun to revisit, of course. I mean, and yeah, it's a tradition. People did this before in classical or in jazz, or because I have a lot of criticism because of that. You know, it's like, oh, can't you do something different? You know, well, it is different. It's got the same melody, maybe, but it's different. Well, thank you. Anyways, I'm touched by your words. I mean, and yeah, well, then if you heard the last one, and I did this tribute to. The Viennese school and the French composers of the 19th century on piano, and it's a dream I've had for the last 30 years. So yeah.
Yeah, Visa Mundi was just an experiential album.
Oh, cool.
To me, I don't know if this will make sense, but and I mean it as the highest kind of praise. But listening to Steve Shehan is like reading fiction. In the sense that it creates a whole universe, a whole backstory. It's real. There's realism, real textures, real people that you get to know and know where they're from. And but it's also this surreal mix. It's a fictional experience, and it's like dreamlike music.
Wow, I'm very, very, very touched. I'll send you the next one. Seriously, I'm about to release 5 CDs, and this is between you and me. But the next one is 30 years of it's called Many Lives, Many Masters, and it goes from the prehistoric lithophone at the Musée de l'Homme, Museum of Mankind, to the latest hang, both sides, very modern hand drums, and it's a double album. It should come out sometime this year, maybe, I don't know, but I'll be very happy to send it to you. Avant tout le monde.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So this is a good time to talk about something that I've been wanting to ask you. Some people call it deep work, just focused work, but here's kind of how I'm bringing that. Because you're of a different generation than me, most of your formative life experiences and most of your career took place before the internet, before constant distractions and cheap placebos and the urge to post anything online right away. Could you talk to what a lifetime of concentrated work looks like, and maybe advice for people who feel like they have something inside, a creative itch to scratch, but who are facing a really tough call, which is, how do you bring that out into the world when there's so many distractions and so much noise?
Oh boy. Yeah, it's you're pinpointing the very essence of how hard it is today to bring something, even to give it. I mean, it's weird, but it's the way it is. Well, I think the first thing is to do it, first of all. To do it without expecting anything in return. It's just, I mean, it sounds maybe corny, but we're so lucky to be alive. We're so lucky to be able to cover anything. Now is, how do you ingest? How do you take this everything? This is where it happens. You have to choose. You have to construct a kind of a logic of what attracts you, whether it's reading or listening or singing, or you have to make it's decisions, of decisions for your taste, decisions of who and how you meet people. So if you travel, but you don't have to travel, but traveling did a lot for me, because being confronted to different cultures. Of course, today it's different because you have access to everything right away. But then, just to have a African piano or djembe or any instrument or even books sometimes, or you had to go and search and ask and trust and yeah. But it's still actually, if you want it, it's still like this. The quality of who you will meet and it will all be linked to your decisions, to the ethic you have to, and when it comes to creation or a path, as you were asking, it's to do it without expecting anything in return, because the problem is the narcissism of the society today, the likes, you know what I mean, all this crazy instant, John Lennon called it instant karma, now it's instant being loved or whatever you call it. It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible because time stretches. Time is everything and nothing at the same time. And when you're not expecting, you have time to, work, to approach things profoundly. And you'll be surprised of how many people are still in this system. Not everyone is linked to this craziness of the rapidity and the instantaneity of everything today. So I think it's working on your values, on the ethic, and what you think. Not be afraid of taking time to search and then take risks. It's take the risk of anything creatively. Of course it takes time, but it's worth it because you learn from it. You learn from your mistakes. You learn from your It's a hard question actually because of the power of what we're surrounded in today. But I just can talk about myself. I mean, I decided that I'm very happy creating. I'm not making any money out of it, and it's okay. And I always can find, sell a painting if I'm lucky, or help a friend, whatever. Even without being rich, which is not a problem. I mean, just to be able to work and create and search is already such a luxury. Luxury, really. In some places, you don't even have time for this because you have to survive. So. Yeah. I think it's being conscient, being really conscient, and open your eyes and art and to see what's around you and being aware. I know all this is corny and it's not religious at all. Spirituality is important. Being religious is nothing but spiritual. There's a quest, there's a questioning, and that's important. And I have to cope with my questions, and that's important. We can't avoid pain, and we can't avoid questions. So that's important too.
Yeah, thank you for these words of wisdom. It gives me hope for my own creative journey. And looking at your work, I mean, I can see that you made those tough decisions to honor the process, to not cut corners, to work slowly.
That's really important.
And to be proud of the work that you put out. Yeah.
Well, the most important thing is the quality of friends, and that's the thing. Being loved and loving is really it's the main thing, and it's the same in appreciating music or reading. Anything you appreciate is the love you give to this moment, because someone wrote it, someone painted it, someone played it. Wow, we're lucky. We're very lucky.
That's profound, and it's true that when we look at your work and we start zooming out the camera a little bit, there's all these people in your life that have influenced your work and your art, and it's just a big family. We can sense that.
Oh, yeah. And I'm proud of it. Very thankful.
Yeah. So I want to pivot. I want to pivot really quick.
Okay.
Because of your success as a musician, you must have spent a lot of time on stage in recording studios and talking with the media. But for you, what's the role of leaving all that? What is the role of travel and going on adventures for your creative life?
Well, actually, it's the main role. It's much more important than studio life or business life, which I love it. Of course, I've loved it for years. It's interesting. It's stimulating, but nothing to compare with the mystery of coping with a new place or discovering new artists or people. Um, I have so many stories about suddenly being in the middle of the desert and meeting this guy. Those days I was flying as a pilot. He was a surgeon. And we started talking. The guy invites me for tea in his place. We're talking about the border of Niger, Algeria, and Libya. And the guy has a lute in his place. He takes it, starts playing. And he's got a way of playing which is beautiful, starts singing. And I'm amazed. And this guy is Bali Otmani. We spent 15 years working together. I mean, the guy is like a brother to me.
Yeah.
It's one of the biggest things in my life. That's an example of what, and it's totally unexpected. I wasn't going there to find musicians or to jam, or I was just, flying around, for other reasons. That's one example, but the other example, I went to Tajikistan. I didn't know what I was going to discover in Tajikistan. And I realized I was in the place where, in the Pamir region, the beginning of the Sufism. I met great, of course, musicians, but I met poets, I met writers. I didn't expect it, but it was great to be there. Traveling is much more important. That's what I want to say anyways. Whether it's Afghanistan or Iceland or Sahara or Mauritania, a place I love. No one knows Mauritania. But this place is amazing. It's the women who have the memory of the music and the way they play, the way they swing. When you listen to Dinimint Abba, for example, the girl, she plays a harp, she sings, you transcribe what she sings on a guitar. It's a B.B. King, but B.B. King level 100. It's stunning. It's great, and it swings, and that's an example again. Traveling, it's this. It's unexpectedly, suddenly you're facing something amazing. The first time I went to Bali, I was just stunned to see kids, 2-year-old kid sitting on the lap of his grandfather, his hands in the hands of his grandfather, and the grandfather is playing the terompong. And with the hands of his grandson, whatever, which doesn't really know what he's doing, but his hands are moving with the hands of his grandfather. And that's a way of learning. And I'm looking at that, and I'm like, whoa, I want a grandfather like that. No, I'm joking. But wow, traveling, I think everything I've learned, I learned it traveling, Brazil, Cuba. And luckily I started early because of paperwork I didn't have in Europe. So I started, hitchhiking. I was like 13, 14, going everywhere, Yugoslavia, Greece, Turkey and stuff. But traveling did the thing. It's okay. Sometimes it's slippery or risky, but wow. It's what you project and what you get back. And once again, if you don't expect anything, but your heart is open, wow, you'll receive so much more. And this I've learned while traveling. So then you come back, and all these ideas or all these emotions, well, then you use it in studio, or you use it with your band, or you'll use it in your swing, even if you're playing with something corny, but you're going to make money. So it'll pay the next trip, or it will maybe pay the production of your next record, or the machine you don't have, because, when I built my studio, then they didn't have home studios. You have to buy the regular huge thing. It's so expensive. And so, I did the Gypsy Kings for 5 years just to pay for secondhand mix boards. But wow, it was great. And then, so you come back with all these ideas. You have your equipment, and you'll play with Bernstein at Carnegie Hall, or something terrible in a pizzeria, which is okay actually, because people will be happy and you'll be happy playing, and maybe you'll make $1 or $2, or maybe you make a lot of money. And I'm saying thank you to this too. But you're living and you're confronted to everything you have to learn. And that's, I mean, for me anyway, it worked like that. I've learned by traveling and meeting people, and the unexpected became a profession. I really didn't expect this, but wow, it really changed my life, and it's a flavor that I cherish every day. I mean, and I'm still learning. I mean, that's one other thing too. I'm an internal student. For me, the bass is I know a little, but I don't know much, because the more I know I don't know. So it's great because I can learn. And as long as I will be able to learn, that means I'm living, and that's great, because that's a nice promise.
Mm.
You know, tomorrow morning I'll have something to learn. I like to be confronted, and that happened with the hang. The pan drum. It was this, actually, confronted to the unexpected.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. Thank you for sharing these profound thoughts. It's encouraging, it's inspiring.
Oh, that's great.
So I know that music is only one part of your life. You're also a poet. You do field recordings of animals and insects, and but more recently you got into painting heavily. Can you tell me about this new inspiration and what it's meant in your life?
Oh, actually, it probably saved me. I mean, it's in French you call this fulgurance. Fulgurance. I don't know if you say this in English. It's like an enlightenment. I mean, somehow, but it's nothing pretentious. It's just suddenly there's this light coming from somewhere, and it pinpoints you. And I was walking in the streets of London, and suddenly this light comes on me, and I don't know why. Yeah, I've always liked paintings. I mean, in Venice or in London, Turner is something I like very much, and the colors and I don't know, suddenly, but music, actually, it happened the same thing with music. I restarted in a very strange way in the park on a Sunday in Stockholm. I mean, suddenly, like, I'm going to play music. But painting, the same thing happened. Suddenly this light comes, and I'm going to find something to paint on. I'm going to start working, and right away, like with the hang, I realized, okay, it's serious. So I have to dive, really dive into it. And I dove. I mean, I went into it, and it takes time. But it's delicious. Suddenly, you can work the colors, you can work the perspective, and search. You're allowed to search. You're allowed to be contemporary, or figurative, or anything works. And it's the same thing again. It's what you express and what you, I don't know. It's a good way of. It's everything. It's a psychoanalysis, and it's a relief. It's fun. It's exciting. I like oil. Okay, I like painting with knives and brushes, and it indeed, it really changed my life. I mean, it came at the right moment, actually. I needed something to balance with it's not pretentious, but with the power of music, because music it's powerful, it's deep, but it eats you somehow. It can be heavy sometimes because of the time it takes, because of the investment of energy it takes. So I needed something light. Writing is fun, poetry is fun, but didn't make it. And painting, suddenly, it's serious, it's fun, it's interesting, and it suddenly links you to history of mankind. I mean, it's that important. Suddenly you look at Le Titien or Vittore Carpaccio, 16th century, differently, or prehistorical paintings on the caves. I mean, when I look at this, I'm like, wow, how did they do this? It's stunning. And then in the Sahara, we were talking about earlier, the paintings on the stones, prehistorical paintings, are so elegant. I mean, it's amazing. Actually, two covers, Asaruf and Asuf, were paintings, prehistoric paintings.
Yeah.
And I found the same paintings in a circle in Sweden, Polar Circle. There's the place where they have the same paintings, which is really strange, actually. But yeah, so suddenly I don't know. It's another, it's another way of leaving something, maybe. But it's another way to learn humbly, honestly, because I'm not trying. Well, you can see I'm not all around trying to sell. No, it's just I'm thankful to be able to search and to express something and to discover things. So it's somehow it's linked to the music and the emotional field. But I liked when I paint. It's either silent or I listen a lot to Morton Feldman and stuff like that. So it's probably linked to silence somehow, and I like it. I paint early in the morning. I wake up at 4 or 5, and whether it snows or anything works. But I'm up at 4 or 5, and I start painting in the morning early. And then music comes later, at 9, 10. I have a kind of a discipline, but it's delicious. It's a balance to my compulsive music work. I would say it's quite compulsive. I need to work my piano every day, or the bass, or for fun, because I'll never be a wizard, which is not actually what I'm looking for, but same, it's a way to express the piano. I'm not a pianist, but I love being able to express an emotion or pay a tribute to Schoenberg or Schubert or Ravel. Or it's delicious to be able to say, "Whoa, I loved you so much. Okay, this is my little drop I can express in this field of emotions." Well, it's the same with paintings. I'm not Turner. I'm not Picasso. I'm not. But they inspired me, or they gave me ideas at some point, and I'm having a really good time by drawing emotions, or painting emotions. So yes, it's a big change in my life. And actually, logically, there should be a couple of books coming out soon, because suddenly, people like it. And some publishers in France are interested, Actes Sud, and it's interesting. So one never knows.
Well, it's incredibly refreshing to think about having another medium, another tool to express emotions, and it's just another version of you, but through pigments on a canvas instead of frequencies in in speakerphones or. So it's cool to see that facet of you, and obviously you're a very well-rounded artist, and that's incredibly inspiring. Maybe I'll wrap up with this.
Okay.
In a way, an artist is someone who feels something and who wants others to feel that same thing, whether it's through music or pigments on a canvas, or and art really is about resonance. Obviously, that's particularly true to music, because it actually resonates physically. But I just want to say that it's real. It's real and powerful. I can speak for myself, and I think for many others. Your work and your art has resonated with me, and it's quite a unique thing when you learn about yourself through someone else's story. And obviously we have to honor the complexities of people's life experiences. No two people are alike, but resonance is something really powerful. And so I just want to say thank you for your art.
Wow, that's wonderful. Well, thank you for your welcoming. And we'll talk one day about resonance and the lives of people and how it can change your life. Recognizing whether it's the beauty or the pain. The first time I heard Coltrane, I recognized some pain that maybe I went through, and because of that, I started listening to Coltrane. You see what I mean? It's suddenly something touches you. It's important what you just said.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, I can't overstate what an honor and a joy it is to speak with you again,
Thank
Steve.
you so much.
And we'll be in touch.
It's shared. Yep.
Thank you.
Take good care, okay?
Take care, Steve.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Well, here it is, friends. I hope you enjoyed hearing directly from Steve Shehan, who is one of my all-time heroes. I am filled with gratitude after speaking with such an incredible person. If you were to ask me, who are the musicians who make you want to create? Steve would be top of mind. Not only because of his music, which is excellent, but because of his integrity and his posture towards life. The tension is real. We probably can't go viral today or be an overnight success, but we can develop a passion and make art we're proud of and surround ourselves with people who care. Steve has modeled that for us. I encourage you to go to the handpanpodcast.com and to look for the show notes of this episode. There, you'll find links to Steve's music, as well as the full-length documentaries about the Hong and about Steve's life. I also compiled some of my favorite songs from Steve that we referenced in this episode. Finally, you can find his music on all the various streaming platforms out there, and if you feel inclined, consider supporting his art as well. I know this is the Handpan Podcast, but remember, there is more to life than this, whether it's painting, writing, baking, or going on adventures. Though, you should bring a handpan with, of course. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Handpan Podcast, and talk to you in the next one.